What I'd like to do this evening with all of you is to drag you, either voluntarily or kicking and screaming, into the wonderful world of Jewish mysticism. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to be levitating off the floor. I'm not going to be conjuring objects out of thin air. I'm not going to ask anybody to close their eyes tonight. We're going to do a little bit of practical mysticism, mysticism light, what for those who were in attendance at my breakout session know is something that's incredibly digestible and comes out with something that you can easily grasp at the end of the talk. But the reason why I want to do this with all of you is because I'd like to give some structure to the Pesach Seder, the Passover Seder. See, I think that as we read through the Haggadah, we sort of lose the forest for the trees. You know, we're reading Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah used to say, and as we're reading it and taking turns with Grandma about who should say which paragraph, we don't quite realize that there is a flow to the entire evening. In other words, there is a process. The Haggadah is not just a collection of short vignettes that have been smushed together to make it more excruciatingly painful by the time you get to eating the food. There's actually something that you're meant to experience as the night goes on. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to provide a bit of a framework for how to understand this, and the way I'd like to present it is a very, very deep mystical concept that was the original intent of how the entire Seder was devised. And the way I'd like to do that is by breaking up the Seder into four parts. Now, can anyone guess what might be a good chapter heading for all of the 4 parts of the Seder? What's a nice way to break up the Seder into 4 parts? Yes, Ben?
1 cup, 2 cup, 3 cup.
Amazing. We have built-in separate chapter headings of our Seder, and the way that it's done is that it's broken up by the 4 cups of wine. Well, how convenient is that? Now, what we may or may not know is that these 4 cups of wine represent different aspects of the Seder, different parts of the Seder, and one connects to the other so that by the end of the Seder, we've actually gone through a journey together. Not just a journey out of Egypt, but a personal, experiential journey into ourselves. So in order to do that, first I need to introduce a few concepts. I have spoken about some of these concepts in our breakout group, but for those who have not attended, we just need a few concepts. Don't worry, don't be intimidated. If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, don't worry. These are very relatively simple concepts to understand, and they apply to the world of Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, whatever it is that you want to call it. Now there are 3 major processes, functions, in the way that we integrate information, the way that the human being, both psychologically as well as spiritually, integrate knowledge. And what they're called is by 3 different words for knowledge. See, the problem with the English language is that we have so many words that all mean the same thing, but they don't actually mean like slightly different aspects of the same thing. We just like lots of different ways of saying exactly the same thing. The difference between the English language and the Hebrew language, of course, is that in Hebrew, whenever you have a synonym, you know that they mean slightly different things. There is no poetic, flowery verbosity in Hebrew. The Hebrew language is incredibly exact, and so whenever we have a few different words that mean the same thing, then you can rest assured that they are teaching you very, very deeply different concepts. So, 3 types of things that are termed knowledge, but of course they're different types of knowledge. The first one's going to be called Chachma, the second one Bina, and the third one Das. How many of you have heard some form of those 3 words before? Where is the most common place that you might have heard these 3 words? Chabad. So for those who don't know, Chabad is actually an acronym for Chachma, Bina, Das. These 3 types of knowing. And the reason why that is because Chabad is one of the branches of Chassidic thought, and Chabad tends to be very, very focused on the intellectual part of Chassidic thought. So what they're very into is how to break down and use these types of information and knowledge. So let's go through each of the three parts, and then I will show you how they fit into the Seder. The first one is Chachma. So people normally call it wisdom, but that doesn't really tell you anything about the word itself. The word Chachma, according to rabbinic tradition, means that which is received knowledge. Received knowledge. In the Medrash it says, Ma shekibel mirabo, that which you have received from your teacher. In other words, Chachma is the information in its purest form. Something that you simply download, but you have not analyzed or integrated in any way. So if you could imagine, let's say you're studying physics, and all of a sudden your physics professor writes simply an equation on the board. Okay, and you scribble it down because you know it's important, but you have no idea what it means, you have no idea how it applies, nothing. So Chachma is pure knowledge, pure information. In the Chabad tradition, they actually say that Chachma, the word Chachma, is Chet, Kaf, Mem, He, and it is an anagram of Koach Ma, right? You rearrange the letters and they mean the power of what? So you don't even know how it works, why it works, you just know what it is. That's what Chachma is. Everyone clear with me so far? Chachma, pure, unadulterated, unrefined wisdom, right? It's just a blast to your face. We have no idea what it is yet. Now, after you get that physics equation on the board, what do you need to do? What's the next step that you need to do in order to turn this information into something usable?
Apply it.
Apply it. Good. What else? What?
Derive it.
Derive it. Good. Where does it come from? How does it work? Analyze it, right? Break it down into its components. Figure out the nuts and bolts. So that's going to be step 2 of our process of integrated information. It's called Bina. Bina. The word Bina, some say it comes from the language Bnei, which means to build. In other words, you take lots of different pieces and you build it back up. Or some people say it's from the word Bain, meaning between this and between that, because you're able to distinguish. Oh, it's not quite this, it's not quite that. You are ever refining. This is where your real analytical skills come into play. You take the physics equation on the board and you say, well, hold on a second. In certain conditions, it acts like this. How did we derive that, Ben? Right, exactly. How does it apply? What happens when you add, mass and volume? And what happens when you have wind resistance? Does that change the equation at all? So all of a sudden, we're starting to add a lot of depth, a lot of detail, right, to our pure, unadulterated physics equation. So step 1 is Chachma. That's what your rabbi, your teacher, gives you. And step 2 is Bina, what the rabbis say, Hamevin davar mitoch davar, one who's able to make inferences and distinctions and be able to figure out, well, if this means that, then this means that, and this means that, and this means that. You're now able to use that equation and say, and come up with all kinds of other derivatives of that equation. So that's step 2. That's Bina. Everyone got me so far? Step 1 is Chachma. Step 2 is Bina. Okay, fantastic. Now, you've got your physics equation, which your professor gave to you. You've analyzed the heck out of it. You know exactly how it works, why it works, where it works. Good. Now, what's left? What's left when it comes to processing information? Yeah.
Using it. Was that no? That's
Using it, we've applied it. We've done some experiments and tests. Yeah.
Like share it or teach others.
Share it to teach others. That's a nice one. I like that. Right? Benjamin Franklin said, once taught is twice learned. Yes? So we're not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet. You cannot teach it unless you have this third stage. But what's stage 3?
knowledge.
What does that mean, knowledge? That's just another synonym for wisdom and knowledge and...
The answer.
The answer?
Well, yeah, the answer to the equation.
The answer to the equation, well, no, we've gotten the equation, right?
Yeah, but
you know, force equals mass times acceleration. Okay, fantastic. Now I know force equals mass. Oh, wait a minute. Well, what happens when there's wind resistance? What happens when we're in space? What happens this time? Let's show this by smacking something with a baseball bat. Great, now we know how it works. But what's the last thing?
Integration.
Integration, Gav. Thank you so much. Integration. I can, at this point, at stage 2, it's still entirely theoretical. But do I live it? Do I breathe it? Do I act in the world as if it's true? You know, you can show me lots of equations about how fire converts mass into energy. But until I stick my hand into the fire and say, ouch, then I don't really fully understand what fire does, right? Step 3 is something called das. Das means integration. In fact, das actually means combining, joining together two things until they become one, which is why, everyone, we're going to be mature here, right? When it says at the beginning of Genesis that Adam knew his wife, it uses the word vayada, the verb das. He knew his wife, which means he became one with his wife. So that's what knowledge is. Now, you know, it's funny. It's funny that you smirk because we don't use knowledge or learning as a euphemism for sex anymore. Isn't that interesting? We don't really do that. We say, yeah, I learned, I'm not even going to say it, right? I'm not even going to say it. But it's so fascinating. The way that we approach knowledge is purely through like consumption. We think of learning as like eating something, right? It is now in me. I've now got it, right? But in fact, the way that earlier civilizations understood wisdom is that it's much more of a relationship. You're experiencing something. That's really what knowing is. It's part of you. It's a give and take. So integration, das, is the final piece of the puzzle, and that's really where you've taken it off the board. You've then analyzed it, and then finally you live it. It's real. It's experiential to you. You don't even have to think twice about it. You don't even have to analyze it anymore. Okay. Now, I've just given you 3 tools for how to integrate information. That's going to be true with anything, whether it's memorizing or learning for a test, whether it's practicing a new skill, whether it's trying to change a character trait inside of you. You want to become more patient. Well, first you have to learn the concept of patience. Then you have to analyze how patience works. And then you have to live patience. All of these can be applied into this 3-stage structure of how to integrate information. So now let's apply it to our Pesach Seder. Uh-oh. We've got 3 pieces of information and 4 cups of wine. What are we going to do, Rabbi? Well, I will tell you what we're going to do. See, das is a flexible thing. Das is a fascinating thing because das integration actually has 2 parts to it. So sometimes we can use a model that uses a framework of 3, but whenever we see a framework of 4, we have to expand das a little bit out. So we see 3s and 4s, by the way, all the time throughout the Torah. And whenever you see a pattern of 3 or 4, it follows exactly the same schema that we're talking about now, which is quite an amazing thing. So the Torah itself is founded on these patterns, which is why it's not an accident that when you have 3 patriarchs and 4 matriarchs, this results in 3 and 4. When you have 3 shalosh regalim, right, the 3 times when the Jewish people went up to Jerusalem, right, and you have 3 temples, and you've got 3s and 3s and 3s and 3s, and then you've got 4 of a lot of things. Anyone got any examples of 4 in the Torah or the Mishnah or anything like that? The 4-letter name of God. Yes? Even within the Seder, what do we have 4 of?
Sons.
4 sons, 4 questions, 4 cups of wine. All of these are going to represent the same thing. So when we have a scheme or a framework of 4, what we have to say is like this. There's Chachma, there's Bina, and then there's 2 types of das. There's 2 types of das. There's going to be a das of love and a das of awe. See, there's 2 ways that we integrate something. There's 2 ways that we make something emotionally real to us. One is love, that's how much we connect and are close with something. And one is awe, that's how much we see the greatness of that thing as it stands outside of us. Now, I'm going to keep that theoretical for now. We're going to understand it as we go through the 4 cups. All right? Everyone good so far? Any questions, comments, political statements yet? No? Nothing? Good? You're just being British? You do actually have a question. Right now, speak your piece, clarification. I've just given you the Chachma. There is this thing called 3 and 4. We're now going into the Bina, but now so we're doing analysis right now, but I want to really feel it. I want to really make it real. So we're going to try to do that, but you're going to have to actually do that on Seder night as you're drinking the cups of wine. Any questions? All right, here we go. Who can tell me what the first cup of wine is? What are we doing in the first cup of wine? Anyone? I know it's been a year, but yes, good. The first cup of wine we drink is Kiddush. Can you tell me what's your name? Eliana. What does Kiddush mean?
To sanctify.
To sanctify. What a lovely English word. What does sanctify mean? Don't say make holy. It's just the same synonym, right? We don't even know what these words mean. They just sound flowery and religious, right? Let's impress the rabbi. Let's just say something flowery and religious, and he'll say, okay, fine, and leave me alone, right? Sanctified, sacrosanct, sanctimonious, holy, sanctuary. What do these things mean? What does it mean? Elevate. I like that. That's good.
Maybe connected to divine.
Awesome. Okay. So Ferdinand is actually right. So Ferdinand's been studying some deep Kabbalah, and Ferdinand knows that the word kadosh, at its deepest level, means totally, utterly connected to something way higher than yourself, right? Totally blasting out of your mind, insane levels of clarity and beauty. That's really what holiness is, right? You're tapping into the light source. That's what holiness is. So the first thing that we do on this night of inspiration and beauty and incredible levels of reaching understanding, the first thing that we do is we just go straight to the top. Straight to the top, right to the source. Let's make Kiddush. Let's bring down all of the holiness and the blessing and all the amazing things that we want right at the beginning. We have no clue what's going on yet. But the first thing that we have to do is just go straight to the top. And guess what that is? Chachma. Chachma. The first thing that we do is we say we have no idea what's going on. By the way, it's interesting. When we ask the 4 questions, who can give me an accurate translation of Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylot? What's an accurate translation?
How is this night different than all the other?
Fantastic. I was waiting for somebody to give me the wrong answer. Why is this night different from all of the nights? What does the word ma mean? What? What is different about this night? We're just asking what at this point. Right now, we're just asking what. The first thing that we have to do is say, what's going on here? I just want to reach up high and receive something. I don't even know what it is. It's unadulterated bliss and blessing. I'm not yet at the stage of trying to break it down. That's step 1. That's Kaddish. So the first thing that you have to do at Seder night is as we're making that blessing on the first cup of wine and we're making Kiddush, you're going to say, give it all to me right now. I'll break down the pieces later, right? It's like a zip file. I can't use it yet, but I just want to bring it all right now, and then as the night goes on, I will unpack everything. Okay. Now, who can tell me what's cup number 2? We don't drink it yet, right? You just take a little bit of wine out. When's cup number 2? Cup number 2 is at the end of the storytelling. Now, who can put the pieces together and tell me how that would correspond to our second stage of intellectual integration, Bina? Why would it come at the end of the storytelling?
Because we would have the theoretical kind of application of all the things we've learned.
The storytelling is all the details, Josh, right? This is what we're here to do. We're breaking down the night. We're learning about all the fine-grained activities of what took place in Egypt and why it's relevant to us. All of these things that started with just a big question mark, ma, now it's turning into real analysis, which is why the more we speak about it, the more praiseworthy we are. The more we analyze it and the more we get into the nitty-gritty details, the more we're turning it into Bina. Bina is something that we can analyze, something that we can distinguish, something we can make fine points about. This is stage 2 of the integration of knowledge. Step 1 is Kiddush. Step 2 is after you've gone through the whole story and you've learned every detail, all the details you wanted to know and didn't want to know. The hardest part of Maggid, by the way, is when they're arguing about how many plagues there were in Egypt. You're like, there were 10 plagues. No, there were 20. No, there were 50. No, there were 200. No, there were 250. It's like, what are you arguing about? I've seen Kabbalistic answers. I still don't understand them. So if anyone has a good way to like engage with that, please tell me. Even rabbis don't know everything yet. Okay. Step 1 is Kiddush. Step 2 is Bina. Now what are we up to? What's cup number 3? This is the best one, right? Cup number 3? Birkat HaMazon. Josh, you're on a roll. Birkat HaMazon. You have finally gotten to the point where you can eat. And at the end of benching, at the end of Birkat HaMazon, we make a blessing on a cup of wine. Okay. Now, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to actually not explain cup number 3 until we get to cup number 4. Where is cup number 4? This one's the hard one. Anyone know what cup number 4 is about? Cup number 4 comes right around Hallel. Hallel. Anyone know what Hallel is? What is Hallel? What is Hallel? Anyone?
Praise.
Praise. They're songs, right? They're poems of King David. That's what Hallel is full of. Yes? Good. So, cup number 3 is after we eat. Cup number 4 is after praise, singing, and then we do a little more singing after the cup. Good. So now I want to explain how these two things fit into Das. The first half of the Seder is entirely theoretical. That's why we barely eat except for a piece of parsley or celery or whatever it is that you guys eat. The first 2 stages are Chachma and Bina. They are the equation as they are on the board. The equation and whatever breakdown and analysis that you've done of that equation, but it is still not a part of you. Guess when freedom feels like freedom? When you're full. When you've eaten. That's integration of knowledge. It's not theory anymore. It's in your stomach. You feel great. We tend to think of like, oh, you know, slavery is this theoretical concept of my... No, you know what slavery is? Slavery is you never have enough to eat. That's what slavery feels like. And when you're full, you say, now I get it. Now I get it. Now I have an understanding of freedom unlike I previously had, no matter how many details I could tell about the story. It's inside of me. I live it. But that's not the only aspect of freedom. See, when you eat and that's just pure pleasure, right? That's the joy. And when somebody gives you an amazing meal, you feel a lot of love. So the third cup of wine is going to be the integration of that knowledge out of love. But there's one more type of integration. And that's what happens when we sing. Singing is not the same as talking. It's not the same as explaining. It's not an equation on the board. Singing is the expression of whatever it is that it means, the words that you're singing. You understand it so deeply that you just can't contain yourself. That's what singing is. Singing is on an emotional level. But it's not just singing about anything. Hallel is specifically singing praise, right? In other words, it's singing gratitude, it's singing thanks, it's singing about something that is much, much bigger and much, much higher than you are. And so whereas the eating part of the Seder was an integration out of love, the singing part of the Seder is the integration out of awe. I sing because there is something that is just so much higher than myself. The only thing I can do to express it is to sing. Is to say thank you, is to say it's amazing, you're wonderful, that's incredible. But it's not about me, it's about you. Love is about me, awe is about you. And so what we have here, if you look at it in totality, is an amazing structure of what's happening throughout the Seder night. The first thing you start off with is an amazing download of something that you have no idea what it is or how to use it. Kiddush. The second cup is after I've gone through all of the painstaking details. The more I speak about it, the more intellectually real it becomes to me. But the second half of the Seder and the last two cups all represent das. They represent my integration of that knowledge so that it's no longer theoretical. It's now practical in the things that I eat and practical in the way that I sing. These are things that we do, not things that we say or think about. And so what you start to see is that the Pesach Seder is not some willy-nilly combination of things that are thrown into a book so that we can say that we, fulfilled our mitzvah. It's actually a process. It's an intentional process, a journey that has been designed to take you from beginning to end so that at the beginning of the meal, you're sitting there with a blank expression on your face. And by the end of the meal, you should have an incredibly deep and integrated understanding of what it means to be free in a Jewish way. And the way in which it was done was through the 4 cups of wine, which is an interesting talk into itself. But that's not for now, because I think we're at a time. In any case, I hope what this does, and I think the reason why I like this stuff so much is because until we have a framework for how to see something, we don't really know how to use the information that we have. And so sometimes the best investment you can make is to start to see the big picture of how everything fits together, and then after that you can start to say, oh, we're up to this part of the Seder. Oh, we're now in the Bnei phase of the Seder, so that you know where you are. What I'm giving you is a roadmap of how to navigate the Seder, so that you know how to put all the pieces together. Now, everything I'm telling you is, of course, information. I've given you a little bit of Chachma and a little bit of Bina, but the only way to have the Das is to actually live this on Seder night. So as you're going through the 4 cups of wine, however it is that it's going to work for you, come to the Seder with a little piece of paper that will remind you. Cup number 1 is Chachma. That's the pure knowledge. Cup number 2 is Bina. That's the analysis of the knowledge. Cups number 3 and 4 are integration out of love and integration out of awe. And then start to see if that does anything to change your experience of the Seder. It really did for me, and I hope it does for you. Thank you very much.